Hey, everybody, welcome back to Miles and Mentors. We got a great one lined up for you today. We have Alex Snook. Hey, that's a great name. He's the CEO of OnSight and co owner of Presidential Trucking. We're going to dive all into his experience and path throughout the logistics industry, tap into the lived and learned knowledge he's gained along the way so that we can pass it on to you. So stick with us. We have a great episode lined up for you right after this on Miles and Mentors.
Welcome to Miles and Mentors, the podcast that humanizes trucking, getting real-life advice and insights from logistics professionals from all over the industry. We sit down with those seasoned mentors who have put in the miles with a mission to pass on the knowledge gained from years in the industry to you. Now buckle up and enjoy the show.
Hey, Alex, what's going on, man?
Hey, Alex.
I know that feels weird to say. You're officially the second Alex ever to be on the show. So welcome.
Nice. Perfect. Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you on, man. Just to share in the green room, we were both having issues with tech. Tech's always fun especially on these. I was sharing that my whole setup kind of died before the last podcast. We still got wires going everywhere, and then just connection issues today. So, man, thank you so much for sticking through. Can't wait to dive in with you today.
Absolutely. No different than freight, right? Always issues. So
Always something, man. Got to keep moving though, right?
Yep.
Well, hey, man. So for those that may not know you, let's start off. If you could just give us a high level introduction of who you are and what's your role in the industry today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my start in freight and logistics about a decade ago at a big box brokerage doing basic, really dispatching for like a sales team, tracking and tracing, and then went into intermodal for a few years, and then eventually started building my own book of business at a small brokerage here in Kansas City. And then throughout that, started my own trucking company. I co-own it today with a business partner about a year and a half ago. And then just recently, I'm a startup, which I'm shamelessly plugging here on my outfit OnSight. So kind of entering the more dealing with shippers directly in kind of a SaaS platform. So
Right on, man. That's fantastic. I've been surprised in starting this just how many people in the logistics community are based out of the KC area. So it's awesome having you just down the road, but still virtual.
yeah, Kansas City is a good spot for it. So
Well, man, I'm curious if we go all the way back, what got you into the logistics industry in the first place? Was this on your radar? Or?
totally not on my radar at the time. I was just looking for a job roughly after college. Yeah, I was about 22, 23, and just looking for that next job, next role. A guy who had a connection already, his foot in the door, recommended it to me. And then after I started to learn more, like we went through a whole month training before I even started working. It was like a real boot camp. And I did. I've never really loved any job because at the end of the day, you're still having to go do something. Everyone wants to just sit on the beach and do nothing, right? But at the end of the day, the stuff that I started learning within freight and logistics, you just started seeing it everywhere. I mean, literally on the road and just thinking about, man, everything had to get here somehow. And just that kind of got my wheels spinning. And like I said, I've been in it and it's definitely going to be my career for the future. And I've sank my teeth in and I do enjoy solving problems, even though some days are awesome and some days are just, you just want them to end as soon as they started. So,
That's a great way to put it, man. So, jumping into the industry, building that book of business you were talking about, where did the entrepreneurial spirit come in to branch out from there?
gosh, I had the people that helped me like learn everything eh, was such a huge advantage.
Mm. Yeah.
Really starting my book of business at a smaller brokerage that had like 10 employees or less. I can't exactly explain why I had the itch to, be an entrepreneur necessarily. It just the more and more I was taught and learned from them, like really got a hands-on experience kind of building my book of business. Because I know a lot of brokers, they don't necessarily cover all their trucks or maybe didn't learn that way, like
Right.
talking to the driver, communicating, texting the driver, like more, being able to give those real-time updates to the customer. I think just learning such a full picture from such an early starting point, I don't know, maybe gave me more confidence to finally go out and eventually be 1099 and actually be self-employed. So I think just from all the knowledge of the people that taught me really gave me a lot of confidence to be able to do that. So
I love that, man. And that's while a little bit different on the side of the industry, that's exactly what the majority of our listeners are diving into, right? Going from working for a company to working for yourself and taking on all the craziness that comes along with that and having, the kahunas to jump out there and take that risk. Since you've done that, has it been rewarding for you?
yep. All the bad stuff, all the crazy stuff, all the sleepless nights, I would still do it again.
Love
Um,
that.
it is an industry. There's been so many jobs that I had that were in sales that were non freight related that I was like, I'm not really servicing the customer. I'm not, I'm
Yeah.
trying to force a square peg into a round hole, and you kind of have to bend your knee to the company's morals, so to say. That you got to make those sales calls with freight. Like, you have to find your niche and actually provide a service that makes sense to the customer. And once you do, you actually feel like, hey, you're needed, you're valued, and I'm going to keep getting better at this. And it sounds so cliche. I've heard it a lot, definitely through my freight career of, you know, you learn every day, you learn something new every day. I have had several of those moments where I'm like, I thought I knew it all, but today's the day. Something is new where this thing blew up over here or this fire
Right.
had to put out. So it's definitely
It's
been
always
rewarding.
for sure. Well, man, I want to dive in and get to know more about OnSight. Obviously, you're repping there, but before we get to that, I'm curious. From building your book of business to launching a trucking company, what was kind of the thought in your head, and have you run into like what were the hurdles you went through getting a trucking company off the ground?
Yeah, kind of. I was just going about my normal broker side of the business,
Yeah,
prospecting, talking to people local, and I actually had kind of a neighbor, so to speak, down the road that had a small company he was shipping out of, and I had passed the idea that I was like, hey, I might buy a hot shot, and might be able to run some trucks where he's like, well, I might have an opportunity for you. And then I called one of my friends who is in the wedding venue space here in Kansas City, and I basically I told him like, hey, I know the brokering side of the business. I think we can be successful together on the trucking side. It's just the other side of the same coin,
yeah,
so to speak. But the the hurdles along in the beginning, man, there are so many complicated steps of taxes and filing and getting the stickers on the truck and waiting and
yeah,
communicating with, finding a truck and the sales rep and making sure you're getting it inspected properly and sourcing for a driver to, hey, we're going to go through all this down payment stuff and really get the money flowing to get this. But do we have a place where we can keep the truck at? Who's going to be reliable? Do we get someone that's brand new that might be willing to help us out on the money side just to begin because they're getting their feet wet as a new driver? Or are we going to go with a super experienced driver and may pay more at the beginning? But so it was all those types of questions. And honestly, at the end of the day, you can only learn on YouTube or learn on paper so much. When you just do it, those are the fastest learning experiences. So those are just a few off the top of my head of just trying to recall back to, yeah, it was like fall of 2023, I think, was when we got everything kicked off. So
right on. Well, it's one of those industries, and especially for guys that have, came into the industry, been company drivers for a few years, you learn a ton, and there's so much to learn in the industry. But then when you transition from being that company driver to actually owning the company and taking on all the responsibilities that come with that, I mean, a lot of these guys are owning the company from the driver's seat, right? So many hurdles to try to make all that work. Getting into that space, did you have anyone that you would consider a mentor that, really helped you get your feet wet in that avenue of it?
I wouldn't say a direct mentor, so to speak. I stay in touch with a really good coworker who she has done like oversized and project sized freight, and she was
Mm.
never a driver herself, but there was people along the way where I started kind of recalling like, oh, I remember so and so was a driver. I'm gonna call him and kind of get his perspective. And when I was brokering loads, I was now talking to the driver with kind of a different I guess I was listening with a different ear, so to speak.
Right.
Like, hey, real quick, when you have this thing going on, or hey, when you get paid, do you like dollar cents per mile, or do you like a revenue share, or how much time do you get off? What's your schedule like? What's the biggest thing you're having a pain point with brokers? So, wasn't necessarily like a one person mentor. It was more. hey,
Right.
as I'm going along the way, now I have relevant stories to, or relevant examples to actually talk to the drivers about. And it was nice, when I was brokering loads, being able to talk to a driver and they're like, hey, can I get this rate? And me kind of knowing the rates out there and what I was experiencing, I was like, hey,
Yep.
I own a couple of trucks myself. I totally get it. And it was nice to be able to just have that back and forth, like, hey, I
Yeah.
appreciate you. You know what fuel's like, you know what repairs are like. So not necessarily one mentor, just a lot of different people, that some that I probably don't remember their name. We did a couple loads on like one of my brokered loads, but they still were a process in helping me learn the industry and talking to my own drivers. Hey,
Yeah.
stand at the truck parking spot, or what parts of the country do you not like going to? It's just, you learn so much that you can't really know until you do it. So
Definitely.
the experience alone was a mentor, I guess. So
No, that's a great way to put it for sure. And
yeah.
I think you bring up the amazing point of kind of that collective mentorship, right? Like, I mean, you were in a unique spot, being able to talk to all those drivers on the phone and pick their ear to really get an insight into the industry. I think it's fantastic, especially on that side, to be building that book of business and be able to relate to those drivers on a whole nother level. Probably work to your benefit tons on that side as well. But you also mentioned diving into stuff like YouTube and the internet, and that's the amazing thing about the modern day is, like this show, so many others out there, so many YouTube videos. Anytime you're in your parking spot getting some rest or whatever, I mean, even driving down the road, there's so many podcasts you can pop on audio and soak in so much knowledge. There's so much out there to learn from, and
Mhm.
prevent having to rebuild the wheel, right? Have that firm foundation to build on that other people have, tested and tried, and build up from there to really solidify your own company.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in today's age, you got to combine both. You got to be willing to take the risk. You have to use the tools at your hand. You have to go take the risk and use technology, watch those webinars, watch those seminars, watch podcasts like this, and just start looking for little things, or just asking people for time. And there's been people I reached out like, hey, could I ask you a question? And even if it's just a back and forth exchange over social media,
Right.
that's helped too. So yeah, I think you have to couple both the real life experience, you have to take the risk, and you've got to couple technology, and you can basically put the 2x, 3x speed on your learning curve with the internet. So
100%. All right, talking about technology, man. I'm curious. I want to learn a little bit more about OnSight. I know you've mentioned some cool stuff in there, but give me the just what is it?
so it's a SaaS platform for basically, I like to call it a driver check-in on steroids.
Okay.
There's some fraud prevention measures. There's some dock efficiency tools. So right now we're only selling to shippers, and we are kind of building that ecosystem, but basically giving more visibility at that point of pickup. And we think it's going to help a lot of issues where, a small, medium, or enterprise customer can eventually use. Obviously, right now we're in the beta phase where we're getting some people locally here in Kansas City to test it, use it, work out the bugs. I'm not the tech head. I have an amazing lead developer. We do have a co-founding team of four. We all have freight and logistics backgrounds, like over 35 years combined. A
Nice.
data analyst, engineer, worked in factoring, a logistics manager in the military. So we have an amazing team. And kind of the story, it happened last summer when I was brokering a load. A full truckload of electronics got stolen, so that wasn't fun. Still
Right.
dealing with the ramifications of it today. And there's a
Really?
whole story behind that, with just situations that the customer can't predict, the broker can't predict. So there's a lot of it's multi-layered, but we definitely want to be, put a dent in the fraud um, problem. There's definitely no one silver bullet that fixes everything, but kind of our goal is to, eventually connect shippers and brokers so they can actually team up and, have some faster communication on that. So
Right.
there's still a lot of work to be done, and we're just in our first iteration. But yeah, our website's verifyonsite.com, and it's the play on words, so it's SIGHT, because we want it to signify like we're building a visual ecosystem, and eventually include brokers, carriers, receivers, factoring companies. But right now, just starting at the shippers, because that's where the physical transactions happening, and we think we can put a pretty big dent in it by starting there. So
Now, I know you said one of the aspects of it is really based around that fraud deal, and there's so much of that in the industry today. What are kind of your thoughts on fraud right now? Do we see it being curved anytime soon? Mainly because so many people are talking about it and, you know, I'd say addressing the issue, but is the issue being addressed in your mind?
I think it is. I think there's a lot of players. I mean, I'm connected on LinkedIn with several people. Shout out to Dale Prax at Freight Validate. I know they've got the Freight Fraud Task Force, John Cantera, the double broker bounty hunter. He has an amazing channel. Um, I think all these individual efforts are going to make a difference. It's going to take time to play out for sure, where we'll actually be able to have measurable data like, hey, did
Yeah.
this problem get solved over a certain amount of time? Um, so I think it's definitely being talked about way more, which is great. I mean, before you can take action, you have to be aware of a problem before you can fix the problem. And I think it's pressing on people's minds more, because even though, if you don't, you know, I'm in the fortunate but unfortunate situation of having this exact moment of a full truckload stolen, right? That kind
Right.
of gave me and one of my co-founders, Eric, the inspiration for the idea of like, we need to work closely with shippers. But if you don't have that, like, really pain point, you can't necessarily grasp it or like put your finger on. Everyone's kind of like that Spider-Man meme, where everyone's pointing at each
Yeah.
other. So it's like, how do we all collectively solve this, even though it individually affects us differently? It eventually will come down the supply chain and affect you, but you don't know how and you can't quantify it. So I think through a lot of individual efforts, the Freight Fraud Task Force, Gin Logs, I've seen some of their, if you know, it's amazing technology, and hopefully we can play a small part in it too. So
Fantastic. Yeah. I've been keeping up with all that. We had a few of those guys on the show, and hearing, I think the biggest thing that is exciting to me is hearing how many different corners of the
mhm.
industry are getting in on this. Because I mean, fraud affects everybody in different ways. So having all these different aspects of the industry saying, okay, let's do something, and kind of tackling this from all sides, I think that's really going to be the key that makes the big difference.
Yeah, my one of my co-founders, Eric, he's always, I don't know if he coined the phrase or not, but he's like, he considers it a national emergency. It's like,
Yeah.
I if you can start, I think the Freight Fraud Task Force, what they're doing with like the education pieces and what they're going to be rolling out here in June, I
Yeah.
can't. I'm looking forward to really studying those. I know I'm digging in now to deep, like, webinars and stuff like that I can find my hands on, that are just long, you know, topics of conversations around it, because I learned something new on the webinars too. But it's going to be definitely going to be a battle. I think we're always going to have to we have to stay on our toes, essentially. Like, just the same thing we deal with the problem in freight of changing rates or the tariffs going on. Like, it's this whole separate thing that I think's just been growing. But now we actually have some players that we can point to, and
Right.
it's definitely not going to be solved by one person. So I'm excited. It's scary. It's big. It's a big monster. But at the same time, I'm like, we just got to start simple. Everyone play their part, partner when we can. Obviously, everyone are, competitors to a degree, but at the same time, we definitely all want to have this industry. Whoever's fallen in love with this industry, they love it because of probably the problem solving itself. So it's going to be fun. So
100%. And, to that phrase, a national emergency, I can't disagree with that. I mean, we really got to
might
look
be
at
an understatement.
yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, you really have to look at the impact that this industry has on the nation, right? Like, without this industry, the nation cripples in so many ways. And something as massive as this fraud issue really puts that entire infrastructure um, in jeopardy. Because I mean, really, this is the type of stuff that can put critical businesses out of business and really bring a lot of things to a halt, or bring prices way too steep. And that, I mean, that impacts the entire nation. So yeah, national emergency. I cannot disagree with those words.
Yep.
Well, man, I want to dive back just a little bit and kind of focus in on, for our demographic, these guys that are becoming company owners and looking to scale up. With you opening up a trucking company,
Mhm.
bringing on that equipment, bringing on that driver, what would you say were some of the financial hurdles or I guess, strategic approach to financing your first truck to get that company off the ground?
Well, it definitely wasn't, hey, I'm good at truck driving, so I'm gonna be a truck driver. Never been a truck driver, right? Never got my
Right.
CDL. I still hope to one day. So definitely having a plan of action, just because you're excited about the idea today doesn't mean you need to do it tomorrow. Like we talked about, start looking at your webinars, start researching, start asking people, hey, what were your expenses? What to expect? Start planning out as much as possible, as much as you can, because there's still a lid on, a ceiling on how much you can plan, because then eventually you just have to
Yeah.
get out there and do it, of course. So plan as much as you can, because if you need, everyone's financial situation is different. If you need to save up a little bit of money to do it. And then honestly, the biggest piece is who can you partner with and finding the right people. Because when you
Yeah.
start out, if you're going to be an owner op, for me, it wasn't planning on, driving the truck and I fit it in my schedule. It was, as a business owner, I knew that I'm not going to take profits at the beginning. I'm going to put that back into repairs and the drivers. But if you're going to be an owner op, who can you find as your billing person, right? Is it a wife? Is it a close friend? Start to think about the people you can partner with that are close friends. But at the same time, are they your close friends? Yes. Are they maybe good business partners? Maybe no. So it's sourcing really the right people to partner with. You don't create headaches for yourself later.
Yeah.
So um, my business partner that did help with some of the funding, it was a perfect match because he was taking on the financial risk. I've invested some myself, but not as much as him. But I was taking on the time risk. Hey, everything I've got going on with my brokerage, with OnSight, I'm still going to run and dispatch the trucks and
Yeah.
actually have the relationship with the drivers. So the early on stuff, if I had to sum it to one thing, would be think about who you can partner with, whether that's you need someone for billing or a team driver or someone to just manage the finances, or do you need a dispatcher? Asking those questions, are you going to be, or can you find a local company that you can just contract with? And does that make enough money for you that that could work? So do you want to spend your time prospecting for a local company before you go buy that truck? Or is it going to be load board freight? And then who do you know
Yeah.
that's a good dispatcher that you can communicate well with and you trust to book you loads on the road? So that would be my biggest key, because if you find the right people to partner with, the money thing will work out depending on whether you could start next month or maybe it takes you 6 months. So the right people to partner with for sure.
That's fantastic insight, man, and I'm right there with you. It's making me think. I know you said your company had a little bit of funding jumping in. Some other guys don't. I mean, they get the equipment, and that's kind of the funding they had. But did you guys work with like factoring or anything, or were you able to self fund to get started, or how'd that work for you guys?
We tried not factoring for the first few months, but just within it, it's not necessarily the amount of expenses. It was just the timing of things
Mm.
was really kind of the issue. Because if you look at it on paper, and I would always have conversations with my co-owner, I'm like, the math is mathing, 30 days. But when he was checking things, he was checking it once every few days or once every 10. And so every time he would look, it was off. It wasn't totally the full picture of the 30 days. And that was
Right.
just purely timing. It was the same numbers, but he was looking at it at a different lens. So eventually we did factor and made it a lot simpler, a lot easier we hired, a part-time billing person. So definitely went the factoring route. I definitely think it's smart.
Right on. Well, I know you had mentioned, partnering with, different services or whatever, and I've seen some of the various factoring companies have those, kind of built in to some degree. Did you find benefit in that as well?
Just with the um, re-ask it, the factoring portion, just doing.
Well, as far as like, I'd say like fuel services, tires, stuff like that, having those, different partnerships that they're able to kind of add the value
Yeah,
to
yeah.
it.
I will say we actually were under contract for one that I didn't find the most value from. I will say we're actually coming up to our contract at the end of this year. There is one that I did find the really, really good value on fuel savings. So I will say that it was like, oh darn, we found out after we already signed a contract. But yes, they have the fuel discounts, and they really seemed like a company. Um, if the name comes to me, like I said, we signed the contract already, but we won't start it till January of
Right.
2026 because we have to let our current one fund out. But it was one of those companies where you talk with them, and it's like this was a good service, low price on the percentage, but also the actual deals, and gives us a vast network to actually stop and get fuel at just more than just one location. So, but the one we have now is a decent deal. I think we partner with Loves too, has been good for, some issues we've had on the side of the road. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the new factoring company we're starting with here at the beginning of the year. So
Fantastic. Man, yeah, that's one thing. You gotta find some deals on fuel, right? I mean, if there's nothing else, that's one thing you're gonna burn through in
yeah.
this
And
industry.
finding connections with local mechanics, that's another thing that I would recommend, is start reaching out now wherever you're based at or where you're keeping the trucks at. Because like I said, maybe you're going to be the business owner, but you're not driving. So maybe your driver doesn't live in the same town as you, depending on your relationship. Start sourcing out like, hey, I plan on going to business in this date. What are those hourly rates? What's your availability? Like, that's one of the biggest things. Yeah, you may have a guy that has really good prices, but every time your driver takes, a weekend off, he's been out for 2 weeks, you need a fix on that truck.
Yeah.
He's working part-time. You can't get the fix done. And then now you're delayed. So getting those partnerships, letting them know you're going to be in the area, if you have kids, I don't know if you have kids, but like getting a handful of babysitters, it's kind of the same mentality. Get a handful of mechanics, you always got one on rotation. So throw that tip out there.
No, that's a great point, man. I mean, between the fuel and this truck's breaking down, it's like this industry, you can make a ton of money, but you're also gonna spend a ton of money. So you gotta be on top of it, make sure you know who you're
Yep.
gonna work through and get those discounts wherever you can, for sure.
Yep.
Well, kinda looking back, I'm thinking back to some of the fraud issues we were thinking about and just, how that's curving the industry and
Mhm.
and everything that we're looking with. In your mind, how can small carriers and brokers really protect themselves from fraud as they're getting started?
Gosh, I would say, as far as a small carrier, if you're the owner op and you're not necessarily sitting behind the desk, I would just ask that, if you're brokering the freight, like if you booked a load from a broker,
Yeah,
I would ask that shipper when you go to pick it up, be like, "Hey, can I ask who the broker is on this load?" See if they have access to that information. That way, if you booked a load with a big box brokerage and they're able to tell you, then great. You can do some little self validation if you're the owner op and you're the one checking in at the facility. Um, as far as the smaller broker too, or even just if you're a bigger broker but you have a newer client, just verifying with the shipper. And that's why we kind of started with the shippers, and OnSight's vision is prod them a little bit, like, hey, when the driver checks in, can you let me know, who checked in or what the so you're gonna probably have to do a little bit more manual checks just to, but I think it's worth it. Like I said, one, especially if you're a small brokerage, I mean, one double brokered load that turns out to be a nightmare could
yeah,
be the end of your
yeah,
business. So those small manual checks, I think, just authorizing that. And if you're the carrier, yeah, just asking the shipper, hey, I booked this with so and so, or have them tell you first, so oh, you told me broker A. Well, I actually booked it with broker B. Let's find out what's going on here, because something's off. So
definitely. Yeah, that's exactly what's coming to my mind is we see so many different avenues of the industry, but especially so many different trucking companies talking about, fraud today. And it's a giant pain in the butt to so many. But like you said, to someone just starting out in the industry, if you don't know what to look out for, I mean, that could quickly be the end of you right out the gate.
yeah, and I assume if you're starting out, if you are brokering freight, you're probably going through load boards. So it's a little bit difficult, especially since I've been a broker for several years now, and I kind of know the stuff that, if you're emailing, I'd say another one. This is just on the digital space. Doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily mean it's a foolproof system, but like, if they've got, you can kind of compare a good email signature. It just, it's something that kind of just catches your eye. Pictures of people, it's colorful, it's got a logo. Those obviously can be false positives. I'm not saying just because you have a good
sure.
looking email
Yeah,
that you're legit, but I would say over time, the scammers out there just looking to fly. They're not necessarily spending time to create a really good email signature. So I know for my trucking company, I put in there, don't book with any email that doesn't end in at presidential KC, which is our obviously our domain. So
right.
little stuff like that, putting my name, put my link to my website for my trucking company. So little things like that. Looking for that because if it's got no email signature and it's just Bob1234 at Gmail and it's a broker, they should maybe have a domain. So little stuff like that on both sides.
100%. Great insight, man. Before we wrap up today, on your side with Presidential Trucking, do you guys have plans to expand the fleet? And if so, how are you preparing for that?
Gosh, great question. Yes, I definitely want to be looking for kind of a dispatcher in our next phase of this as we go to, truck number 3 and beyond. We do have a good, I'm kind of on the southern part of Kansas City, and we have some industrial plants out here that I think our next phase, load board freight, I can book loads. Obviously, as a dispatcher, I've got, the capacity and time to do so. And I can keep the trucks moving that way. But I think as we grow to that next step, 3, 4, 5, I'd like to get a couple of contracts with some local companies, and so it's kind of split between that. But I think we have a good source of drivers out here, just physically where I'm at,
Yeah.
that may be looking at some local projects too. So that's the game plan for now. And like I said, back to that partnering with the right people. With my experience in the logistics industry, I kind of have a network to pull from so that we are ready to buy truck number 3, 4, and 5. I kind of have the people to scale with that I trust, know the industry, know the business, know how to take care of drivers so that we keep them right, keep retention high, um, and grow. So,
Hell yeah. That's what it's all about, man.
yep,
Well, I really, really appreciate you coming on today, taking some time out of your day to let us pick your brain. And if you don't mind, I'd love to get you back on and kind of keep up with you on you expanding Presidential Trucking and seeing how OnSight goes as well. Love to see that as it grows, man.
absolutely. I'd be happy to join anytime.
Well, before we let you go today, I want to give you a chance for some shameless plugs, man. How can somebody get a hold of you and find out more about your companies?
Absolutely. Yes, our company is on site. You can go to the website, which is called Verify, www.verifyonsite.com. And again, that's spelled, if anyone's just listening to this on audio, it's ONSIGHT, not the SIT. So yeah, www.verifyonsite.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Alex Snook, and then emails alex@verifyonsite.com.
Fantastic. We'll make sure to get all those in the show notes below as well. Alex, man, thank you so much for all you do for the industry and for letting us pick your brain today. It means a lot.
Yes, sir. Thank you as well.
All right, everybody out there watching, thank you so much. Make sure you like and subscribe. Go check out their website. And until next time, stay safe out there. Have a great day, everybody.